Kash Patel, Donald Trump's controversial pick to lead the FBI, has made no secret of his plans to weaponize the department to go after his perceived enemies. Those include members of what he refers to as the deep state, the fake news mafia, and even former colleagues. And Patel appears to be making good on that threat already before facing a confirmation process, threatening former Trump White House colleague Olivia Troy with litigation and demanding that she retract, quote, defamatory comments stemming from her blunt assessment.
Trump's cabinet nominees are going down one by one. First was Matt Gaetz, then apparently it seems like it's Pete Hegseth, and now Kash Patel. His latest controversial nominee is revealing his own nature and not in a good way. My name is Dina Doll with the MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down.
Kash Patel is a delusional liar. Let me just be very clear about that. And he would lie about intelligence. He would lie about making things up on operations. I think Mark Esper has talked about that as well, where he put the lives of Navy SEALs at risk in an operation when it came to Nigeria. These are things that actually were happening in real time when he was in the role of CT coordinator in the White House. And I know this because at some point I realized that I needed to double check Kash's work to make sure that I wasn't misinforming Mike Pence by relying on his word. So I had to go around him.
Scandals are mounting. First, we had the Matt Gaetz sex trafficking scandal. Then Pete Hegseth's mother told him that he was an abuser of women, and he trotted her out on Fox to try to defend him. But Republicans are willing these days to look past sexual assault allegations, but rumors that he was drinking on the job or coming hungover to work, as said by his Fox colleagues, apparently was too much, as it seems like he is going to be the latest cabinet nominee to drop out. Next up is Kash Patel. Now, Kash Patel is unique in that he is supposed to be heading the FBI, but he has said multiple times how he wants to actually get rid of the Washington, D.C. Bureau. Lindsey Graham said that they need to clean out the FBI, which sounds an awful lot like defund the FBI. Let's take a look.
Well, I think I'm on Judiciary Committee. Pam Bondi will come out of the committee with all Republicans and I think some Democrats, because she's an incredibly qualified person, very ethical, former Attorney General of Florida. No better pick for Attorney General. Kash Patel, counterterrorism prosecutor, understands the government. And if the FBI doesn't need to be cleaned out, what does? So, yeah, he'll make it out of committee. I don't know if he'll get any Democrats, but I think he'll get all Republicans. I'm a big fan of his choice to be FBI director.
So not only is it hypocrisy to have the party of law enforcement want to nominate this man who has talked repeatedly about actually making one of the premier law enforcement agencies in our country less effective, but he also has ideas about how he wants to use that law enforcement. He has very specific things that he's talked to with Steve Bannon over the years. One of them specifically was going after Hunter Biden, and that could be very well why the president decided to pardon his son with a blanket pardon for so many years, right after Trump appointed Kash Patel.
The other thing we learned, Hunter Biden is guilty of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. Just like they charged Paul Manafort and others during the Trump administration, Hunter Biden was shown to have been in bed with criminals from the Ukraine and China to lobby the United States government through the laundering of money that Hunter Biden and Devon Archer received, and leveraging his relationship with his dad, Vice President Joe Biden. That is the definition of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. He didn't register. This DOJ should, of course, charge him. They won't, because they'll give him a pass and bury it with a Trump indictment. So I think that's where we need to focus.
He took him seriously, and it is for good reason, because Kash Patel revealed himself this week to be serious about his claims. One of his claims that he plans on doing is going after journalists. He has said in his many interviews that that's what he plans to do. He thinks that's a purpose of the FBI, is to go after the journalists. And that is what he did this week as a private citizen. He was so offended by a comment somebody made on MSNBC that 2 days later, he sent a legal letter to that person, telling them that he was planning on suing them if she didn't stop talking about him. This is the person who then plans on using the power of the FBI to go after journalists, as he said. And you should believe him, because he is already going after people In the news, Olivia Troy was the woman that Kash Patel threatened to sue this week. She's the former aide of Vice President Mike Pence. She's been a frequent critic of Trump on MSNBC, and she discussed her interactions with Kash Patel when she was a Pence aide. And this got him so fired up that he sent a legal letter to her. And this is what he said specifically. He said, "This law firm represents Kash Patel. Litigation will be filed against you if you fail to publicly retract defamatory statements you made about Mr. Patel on MSNBC on December 2nd. This was sent literally 2 days later. Be further advised that you should identify and preserve all hard copy and electronically stored documents, information, and data that relate in any way to Mr. Patel and to your statements about him on MSNBC. On December 2nd, 2024, you appeared as a live guest on MSNBC and made several false and defamatory statements about Mr. Patel. These statements include that Mr. Patel would, quote, lie about intelligence and, quote, lie about making things up on operations to the point where Mr. Patel, quote, put the lives of Navy SEALs at risk when it came to Nigeria. And that Mr. Patel was even misinforming Vice President Mike Pence." He goes on to say, "This is a complete fabrication and you know it is false by virtue of your former position in the White House." And in that paragraph, he then talks about how she had knowledge and that this was malicious intent. And the reason why he goes into that is our defamatory laws in this country are broader when you are speaking about a public figure or a public issue. So Kash Patel is certainly a public figure here because he's set to become our next FBI director. And so the point of our defamatory laws are to be more expansive, allow more public discourse, allow more public discussion around public issues and public figures. And so in order for you to prove defamation, you have to prove not only that this was, one, a statement of fact that is false, but also that you either had knowledge that it was false or you had reckless disregard for the truth. That's the malice requirement. If I say something defamatory, let's say about my neighbor in a paper, I don't have to prove that reckless disregard, that malice element. The person suing me would just have to prove that it was a false statement of fact. So he's trying to say in this that she has those elements. The really scary thing here is that here she is talking about her experience with somebody who's going to have so much power. And she's talking about her opinion around it. And opinions are not defamatory. You have to have a statement of fact. And it was really clear in her discussion that she was talking about her experience with him, her opinion about his involvement, how he, how he interacted, what his contribution was. And so it's not even defamatory if it's an opinion. It has to be based on a statement of fact to be defamatory. And that's why it's so disturbing that he sends this letter to her. He sends this letter to her because he wants to silence discussion. He wants to silence criticism of him.
I mean, what does that even tell you, that even before his confirmation hearings, he is threatening you for criticizing him?
Yeah, I think it's a very clear sign of what's to come should he become the director of the FBI and how he's going to conduct himself. I mean, we should take him at his word. These are things that he has threatened in the past. And I think by doing what he did, by sending that letter to me, it was an attempt to bully me, silence me, intimidate me. But it's also a signal to others, right, as he goes into the confirmation process of trying to silence others in terms of telling the truth about his background. I mean, look, I am a person who believes that he is unfit for the role of FBI director, and I have concerns about how he will behave in the role in leading the nation's premier law enforcement agency.
And so you stand by your criticism of Kash Patel?
I absolutely do.
Even if they have this letter saying you've got to retract all this, you're not going to do that?
Yeah, I'm not going to retract from telling the truth. That is where I am. And this is something that I lived when I was working with them, and it is absolutely true. My job in that role was to serve the Vice President of the United States in the best way possible. That is what I did. And if it meant, at times not taking Kash at his word, going around, look, there were people on his staff that used to come to my office and seek counsel from me and advice about what it was like to work for him, who know exactly what I'm talking about.
let's be frank here. He's seen what happened with Matt Gaetz, right? And the defense secretary, Fox person, like he's seen them come down when there's the frank, open discussion on MeidasTouch and other places about what these men were accused of. He doesn't want that frank discussion out there. And so he sends that letter right away. And by sending even just the letter, even if there's no basis, right, in law, even if he's going to lose in court, he has now made her have to hire a lawyer, right? Preserve these documents, as he says, because you have to defend yourself. He's now made her and everybody else who is willing to criticize him in public worried about having to be dragged into court. This is how you silence people in this country, is by doing these kind of letters, by doing these kind of defamation things. And even as a private citizen, he was just named like not that long ago, and he's already trying to silence critics. He's told us that that's what he thinks he should do as the FBI director, is go in and, take down journalists. And then he's doing that right now as a private citizen. So this is the really scary outcome of him if he were to get that power. But him, by revealing himself right now, by trying to silence a critic. And is he going to stop? This is just one letter. We've just a few days in. How many letters is he going to send out? How many different people is he going to try to silence? This is going to come up in any confirmation hearing. It's no longer theoretical. It's no longer, I talked about in a podcast years ago, right? Or I wrote that in a book, but I'm not really planning on going after journalists. When you just did. It becomes a real thing that can and should be used against him when he comes, if he lasts that long and gets in front of the Senate. This is the evidence to use against him, that if you're so willing to go after journalists or people in journalism that are, saying something about you, what are you going to do when you're the FBI? And the same thing is happening. So let's watch him crash and burn too.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.